With Across the Spider-Verse getting incredible reviews and exceeding its box office predictions, I think it's a good time to take a look at all 10 Spider-Man films and see where they rank in terms of their box office results. We'll look at their budget, how much they made adjusted for inflation, and at the end we'll find out which Spider-Man film made the most money, and which Spider-Man film is in the top 10 most expensive films of all time. Number 10. So coming in at last place is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
So you want to learn to be Spider-Man?
Can you teach me?
Yes, I can. Time to swing!
Into the Spider-Verse was something very different to previous Spider-Man and even comic book films. It's the first animated theatrical Spider-Man film, the first Miles Morales film, and the first Spider-Man multiverse film. With a wildly creative and revolutionary art style, Into the Spider-Verse was a big swing for Sony, and it was a mildly successful hit in terms of its box office results. On the lowest budget of any Spider-Man film, Into the Spider-Verse had a production budget of $90 million, and it grossed $375 million at the box office in 2018, $455 million when adjusted for inflation. Into the Spider-Verse won multiple awards, including the Best Animated Film Oscar, and it certainly helped to somewhat remove the animated film prejudice that many have, that animated films are just for children. Into the Spider-Verse has very much laid down the footing for future animated Spider-Man films. Which brings us nicely onto number 9, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
There's an elite crew with all the best spider people in it? Who's the new guy? This is unbelievable.
Across the Spider-Verse doubled down on everything great with Into the Spider-Verse, with even more dazzling visuals and a larger sweeping multiverse plot. The Spider-Verse trilogy will conclude with Beyond the Spider-Verse in 2024, and if Beyond the Spider-Verse deliver the film with a similar level to that of the first 2 Spider-Verse movies, then I think you could safely say the Spider-Verse trilogy is the best set of Spider-Man films ever released. Despite Into the Spider-Verse coming in 10th place and Across the Spider-Verse coming in 9th, they are very successful financially. The production budget for Across the Spider-Verse is only $10 million more than the original Spider-Verse movie, coming in at $100 million. This relatively small budget is somewhat spoilt by the way Sony managed to keep it so low, with reports that 100 Spider-Verse animators quit due to being overworked and underpaid. Nonetheless, Across the Spider-Verse has made $645 million at the box office, and with a week or two left in its extended release run, this figure will most likely be around the $700 million mark. Number 8. The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
This is bigger than you, Peter.
I'm the only one who can stop them.
If the live-action Spider-Man films all sort of blur into one for you, then the easiest way to remember this one is that it's a Spider-Man film with way too many villains. Oh wait, that's Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man 3 as well. So the next easiest way to remember The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is that it ends with Andrew Garfield spinning a manhole cover at a giant robot rhino. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 has an overstuffed plot, with Peter Parker's father having a secret lab in an abandoned subway, Harry Osborn becoming the Green Goblin, Max Dillon becoming Electro, and Peter and Gwen deciding to move to England together before Gwen's untimely death. On a production budget of $200 million, The Amazing Spider-Man 2 made $708 million at the box office, which is almost $50 million less than The Amazing Spider-Man 1. When adjusted for inflation, the box office is $912 million. Number 7. The Amazing Spider-Man.
I am issuing an arrest warrant for the masked vigilante known as Spider-Man.
The reboot of the Spider-Man franchise, with Andrew Garfield replacing Tobey Maguire. The Amazing Spider-Man received tepid reviews, with many praising Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone's chemistry as Peter and Gwen, whilst the plot of a giant lizard man wanting to turn everyone else into a giant lizard missed the mark. The Amazing Spider-Man was released just 5 years after Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3, leading to many questioning whether it was too quick to have a fresh new reboot of Spider-Man. where we see similar story beats of Uncle Ben's death and a coming-of-age story with Peter learning how to use his newfound powers. The Amazing Spider-Man had a budget of $220 million and grossed $757 million at the box office, which was lower than any of the films in the Sam Raimi or John Watts Spider-Man trilogies. When adjusted for inflation, The Amazing Spider-Man made just over $1 billion. Number 6. Spider-Man Homecoming.
Just stay close to the ground. You're the Spider-Man from YouTube.
The reboot to the reboot, Spider-Man Homecoming was Tom Holland's debut appearance as Peter Parker. Restoring enthusiasm to the Spider-Man character, Holland's take on Spider-Man was praised by many, and the lower stakes, MCU humour of Homecoming was different enough to previous Spider-Man movies, and didn't get weighed down in the franchise building of the MCU. Homecoming was a critically and financially successful restart to the Spider-Man universe, a universe which had 3 different Peter Parkers in under a decade. Homecoming had a production budget of $175 million and made $878 million at the box office in 2017, almost $1.1 billion when adjusted for inflation. And at the halfway point, number 5, Spider-Man 2.
There are bigger things happening here than me and you.
For many, Spider-Man 2 is the best Spider-Man film, nay, one of the best superhero films of all time, with Doc Ock as a conflicted villain and a ton of memorable moments scattered throughout the film, such as Spider-Man stopping a train, passing out, and then his anonymity being defended by the civilians he just saved.
He's just a kid. No older than my son.
Tobey Maguire's Peter wrestles with his double life as an ordinary young man and New York's crime-fighting superhero, leading to conflicts with his best friend, Harry Osborn, girlfriend Mary Jane, and mentor figure, Otto Octavius. With a budget of $200 million, Spider-Man 2 made $794 million at the box office, which is the least out of the Sam Raimi trilogy. When adjusted for inflation, Spider-Man 2 made $1.282 billion. Number 4. Spider-Man 3.
Revenge is like a poison. It can take us over. Before you know it, it can turn you into something ugly.
As somewhat of a surprise, the Raimi film to make the most money is the worst out of his 3 films. Spider-Man 3 was in every aspect a bit of a mess, with 3 villains fighting for the limelight, a stuffy, confused plot, and incredibly cringy moments, such as this.
Find us some shade. Thanks, Hot Nice.
And who can forget this one?
Now dig on this.
With the highest production budget of any Spider-Man film, coming in at $258 million, which when adjusted for inflation, comes to $378 million, making Spider-Man 3 the 8th most expensive movie of all time. Perhaps benefiting from the popularity of Spider-Man 2 and being the conclusion to Raimi's trilogy, Spider-Man 3 made $894 million at the box office, which comes to $1.315 billion in today's money. Number 3. Spider-Man Far From Home.
Everywhere I go, I see his face. I just really miss him.
Yeah, I miss him too.
Now fully integrated into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Far From Home features Tom Holland, Samuel L. Jackson, and Zendaya. Far From Home primarily takes place in Europe, with young Peter Parker going on a school trip, as he deals with the death of his mentor father figure, Tony Stark. And he learns that Gyllenhaal's Mysterio is not the selfless superhero he initially appears to be. With the same humour as Spider-Man Homecoming, Far From Home adds Doctor Strange levels of impressive visuals, with some incredibly impactful moments from Tom Holland too. So once again, director John Watts delivered a solid Spider-Man film. With a budget of $160 million, Far From Home had a box office of $1.132 billion. $1.350 billion when adjusted for inflation. Number 2. Spider-Man.
You are amazing.
The first Spider-Man film on a big screen, 2002 Spider-Man was, for those who didn't read comics, the first introduction to the character. Spider-Man set the ground for the incredible amount of superhero movies that came out over the following 2 decades. Yes, the movie was imperfect and seems rather dated now, but it had a campy charm and was full of life. Spider-Man was a fantastic origin story for the web-slinging hero, with William Dafoe stealing the show when he's on screen, and Raimi's signature style makes the original a nostalgic classic. With a budget of $139 million, Spider-Man made $821 million at the box office, which comes to almost $1.4 billion when adjusted for inflation. And finally, in first place we have, drumroll please, Spider-Man No Way Home, also known as fan service at its finest.
Hello, Peter.
No Way Home is the one where all the Spider-Men and Spider-Man villains come together. Maguire, Garfield and Holland team up to take on Doc Ock, Green Goblin, Electro and Sandman, who, like Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, were pulled into Tom Holland's universe through a Doctor Strange spell gone wrong. The excitement and anticipation for No Way Home was incredible, with rumours spreading like wildfire that Maguire and Garfield would return as their respective Peter Parkers. No Way Home had a production budget of $200 million and did incredibly well at the box office, with the third biggest domestic box office of all time, behind Avengers Endgame and Star Wars The Force Awakens. No Way Home grossed $1,910 million, which when adjusted for inflation comes to $2,150 million. So there we have it. In order from lowest to highest box office, we have Into the Spider-Verse in last, then Across the Spider-Verse. It should be said that the production budget of both Spider-Verse films combined is lower than the production budget of all of the live-action Spider-Man films. Then we have The Amazing Spider-Man 2, The Amazing Spider-Man, Spider-Man Homecoming, then Maguire's Spider-Man 2 in 5th place, followed by Spider-Man 3 and Far From Home. The original 2002 Spider-Man comes in at 2nd place, and No Way Home is miles in front, in 1st place. And just for fun, well, further analysis would be a better way of putting it, I've separated the 4 different eras of Spider-Man films. Tom Holland comes in at the top, making almost $4.6 billion with his 3 movies. Maguire comes in 2nd, with his trilogy grossing almost $4 billion at the box office. And in 3rd place, Andrew Garfield made almost $2 billion with his 2 Amazing Spider-Man movies.
Okay, Peter 1, Peter 2, Peter 2, Peter 3. Peter 3.
And the Spider-Verse franchise comes in at 4th place, making around $1.1 billion. I imagine it may come close to overtaking Andrew Garfield's films, when Across the Spider-Verse comes out next year. Now if you enjoyed this video, then consider checking out the Ranked by Box Office playlist that should be on your screen now. If you're new here, then perhaps consider subscribing to Film Club. I review all the major films and shows on their release, as well as the occasional video essay like this one. Thank you for watching, and see you again.